everyone, I'm Holly from Hand Printed, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about screen printing, specifically screen printing onto paper from home and what you'll need to set up. You're going to need a silk screen. This one here is one of our screens we sell in the shop and we use in the studio. We have different types of mesh. This one is a 90T mesh, which looks yellow like this. That just means there's 90 threads in every centimetre of mesh, and that's a really good one for printing onto paper. This screen has been exposed with an open area in the centre in a rectangle. This is something that we can do for you if you'd like. You can order them on our website, a plain screen or an exposed screen. This one's just exposed with an aperture, and you can get those too. All that means is this area that's still yellow is uncoated mesh. Ink is going to be able to go through that section. This area that's green has been exposed and is coated. Ink isn't going to go through that. You can have an open screen, which means nothing's exposed onto it. You can have an exposed aperture like this, or you can have an exposed design if you'd like, and that's something else that we can make for you at Hand Printed if you want to. And we've got lots of information on the website about that, or you can ask us questions if you'd like to know more. But for now, I'm going to be using this one with the aperture with a paper stencil. Another thing that you're going to need that will make it much simpler for printing at home is a board like this. You can get a piece of coated ply, something like that, MDF. At least if it's wipeable, then that's better, something really nice and flat. And then a pair of hinge clamps, which are these. We sell the hinge clamp on the Hand Printed website as a pair, and they enable you to have the screen attached to a board or a table if you prefer. And they're removable, so you can get your screen out and put it back in and it's fixed in position, which is really, really handy. On these screens, this is an A3 screen, we have routed out the board a little bit so that the hinge clamps are set into the board a little lower, and that enables the screen to be a little bit closer to the board, which makes it easier for printing. That's completely up to you if you'd like to do that. We don't do it on our bigger screens, we don't do it on our A2 screens, just the small ones, so it can be helpful. You're also going to need a squeegee for forcing the ink through the mesh. I'm going to be using this one, which is one of our aluminium ones from the shop. It is a 225mm squeegee, which is just wider than my uncoated area like this. These A3 screens will fit 315 squeegees, or you can use a smaller. You want to use a squeegee that's just a little bit wider than your design. You're also going to need some ink, and you have two choices for printing onto paper. You can go for a pre-mixed ink like this one, which is Speedball acrylic screen printing ink, and I can use this straight out the pot. I don't need to mix it. Or you can get acrylic paint, any acrylic paint is fine, and mix it 50-50 with some screen printing acrylic medium. We like to use the System 3 screen printing medium in our shop and studio, and we have it online as well. So those are your two options. All these inks are intermixable, so you can get the exact shade that you like for whatever project you're doing. I've also got a piece of plastic stuck with tape along the bottom of my board. And this is handy for registration. What you can do is print directly onto the plastic, slide your paper underneath. You'll see where the design is going to go, so you'll know where to put your paper. You'll want to tape the edges of your screen. We've taped around the underside of our screen to make sure there's no gap either between the exposed emulsion and the frame, or if you're using a stencil, you want to make sure there's no gap between the stencil and the frame for the ink to get through. We like to use Scotch parcel tape for that. You can use paper tape as well, paper parcel tape. I've cut a really simple paper stencil here. I've just used ordinary 80-gram copy paper, just like the kind of paper that you put in your printer. Something too thick is going to give us blurry edges, and something too thin is going to potentially get too wet and fall apart. I'm going to pop this on my board. I've got my registration plastic down over the board and it's stuck in place. Just going to arrange the stencil so that it covers up the whole of my open aperture. If you taped your screen instead of having an exposed aperture, you just want to make sure there's no gap between your stencil and your tape. If there is a gap, just close it with a little bit of tape or move your stencil around. I'm going to use a spatula to get this ink out, and I'm just going to put a row of ink along the top of the screen, just a little bit wider, not all the way along, just a little bit wider than my open area of mesh, so the bit that isn't exposed and the bit that doesn't have tape on. For this print, I'm going to print onto my registration plastic. You want to hold the squeegee, preferably with two hands, hold it at a 45-degree angle and pull it down the mesh. It should sound a bit like a zip. You want to only pull gently the first time to flood your screen. Some people like to flood up, some people like to flood down, so you'll find your favourite way of doing it. You then want to go back to the top of the screen with no extra ink on your squeegee, and this time at the same angle you want to pull down, but you want to push quite hard this time. You should see your design now through it. If you don't think it's gone through well enough, you can go through and push again. And there it should be printed. I'm going to lift up my screen a little bit, use the squeegee to gently flood the screen with ink. So I'm not pushing hard, I'm just dragging it. And that's going to keep the screen wet for longer, because the enemy of screen printing is the ink drying in your screen. Just going to put my squeegee down to one side, lift up your screen, and you should have your design printed onto your plastic. You can then see where to place your paper just by dragging it underneath and seeing where you'd like it. You can use little bits of masking tape or mount boards to mark the corners of where you like your paper, and then your plastic's finished with and it can go out the way. I know that I've now got my paper in the right place. My screen hasn't moved, so I can lay it down. It's already been flooded, so I can go back over it with my 45-degree angle, pushing hard. Ideally for this process, I'd be standing, and I'd want the table at about hip height so you can lean over and put your body weight into it. So if it's appropriate for you and you've got a table at the right height, then standing is best. You can then lift up your screen. The stencil will have stuck to it, and you'll have your print. Once again, the screen isn't moving. I've got my registration marks here, so I can put another piece of paper, put my screen down and print as many as I like as part of an edition. You want to flood whilst your screen is a little bit raised and print with it flat. If you'd like, you can spray a little bit of low tack adhesive onto your board, which just helps to keep your paper still and stops it sticking to the screen when you're printing. When you're finished printing, you can peel your stencil away from your screen. This can now be thrown away, although sometimes if it's still in good condition, I like to leave it to dry and then iron it flat so I can use it again. You then want to use a spatula or an old store card, something like that, to take off the excess ink from the screen and put it back in the pot, because it's all still usable. My screen is now ready to be washed. What I would recommend you do to wash your screen is have a bucket of cold water and a soft sponge, like a car sponge, to wipe down your screen. You want to work reasonably quickly because we don't want any ink to dry on our screen whatsoever. So I hope that gives you some idea of how to get started screen printing at home. We have loads of information on our blog, and we are always around in private messages or emails or comments. If you would like further help, we can absolutely get you started. You'll find all the products you need on our website, so have a look, handprinted.co.uk. That's where you'll also find our blog, as well as where to find more information about getting exposed screens made if you'd like your own designs put onto screens. Happy printing!